Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Sick. It was a 2022 film, but I believe it hit Peacock in 2023, and that's where most people will be able to see it. But I don't have Peacock, so I actually just rented it through Vudu like I rent a lot of films. But this film's done by, writing-wise, Kevin Williamson, who did Scream. So there's a lot of familiarity there. So if you like some Kevin Williamson stuff, and if you like Scream in particular, you might have some echoes in this movie that you really enjoy. So just gonna throw that out there. I thought overall, before I get further into this, that the film was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. There were moments where I thought, ooh, I'm going to rate this higher, and then it could just kind of like backtracked a little bit. But there were also times where I was like, this is kind of boring, and then it picked back up. So it really kind of hits close to the middle for me personally. But let's talk more about Sick. Directed by John Hyams, who also did Z Nation, Black Summer, and part of the Chucky TV series. So a lot of TV shows and good ones at that. Written by Kevin Williamson, like I said, he's done not only Scream, but The Faculty, Stalker, The Following, The Vampire Diaries, Cursed, Dawson's Creek, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, just to name a few. Also, an additional writer on this, Katelyn Crabb, who doesn't have any other writing credits currently. Quick synopsis. It is about two main characters who decide that they're going to go off to quarantine, because this is during the thick of the pandemic. It's like real world, thick of the pandemic. People are just finding out they need to be quarantining. Everyone's wearing a mask no matter where they go, even if they're outside. So it does a really good job of kind of setting up that world initially, letting you know, okay, this is what we're going for. This time period, basically. And it's about two girls who take off to quarantine together at a remote house. So you can see where we're going here with taking characters to a remote house to make them even more vulnerable, because contacting people will be a lot harder when someone shows up to terrorize them. So that's the main premise of the film. I don't want to go any further than that, because I really can't go any further than that without ruining a bunch of stuff. So here comes more of my no spoiler review. It immediately firmly plants you in the thick of the pandemic. Like I said, people wearing masks, people reminding each other to wear masks, talking about infection, talking about what can happen when with infection, and, you know, how far apart you need to be from people, all that stuff. So for some people who kind of get, it's triggering to kind of think of that time period when you were in the thick of it, when people were still trying to figure things out and really didn't know what COVID was or where it was going to end up going. Maybe this film isn't for you if you don't want to be reminded of those times, because for some people it was, you know, it was a traumatic time. Myself to a certain degree as well, but just giving you a trigger warning there. I don't know how many people will need it. It's very easy to see where the opening sequence is going. Yeah, that's one of the things where I was just like, oh, this is a lot like Scream. And it's very easy to see where things are going to go with that opening sequence. It's pretty easy to see where a lot of things are going within this film, but they do throw in a few little small surprises here and there, which is very welcome, because if I know there are a lot of people who are fine with just like very straight up slasher films, just very straightforward, seen it before, nothing new, plays out as you would expect it to. And I get that. I know a lot of people like that stuff, and like I get it, but that's just not my thing. I kind of want something a little bit new. I don't want to watch a lot of the movies that are just the same in essence. That's just not my thing. The camera work is very quick and agile. That's one of the very interesting things to me with it. Oh, by the way, if you hear noises, my cat is playing around in the blinds. So my apologies. But yeah, really agile, quick movements with the camera. And it really is great for certain scenes to increase intensity, to increase awareness. Some confusion actually helps out, because that helps you feel how the character's feeling in really intense moments. Because they would be doing the same, you know, persons like heads on a swivel if someone's coming at them. And when the camera acts that way as well, you as the viewer kind of are seeing through the eyes of the main character or whatever character is on the screen at that point. And it really kind of helps enhance the experience of the movie itself. So one of the greatest strengths, in my opinion, with this film is the camera work. Really well done, very interesting as well. The music is minimalist, and it works really well. I'm talking about minimalist in Not so much how much it's used, because it is used pretty consistently throughout the film, but the how it's composed is pretty minimalist. Not a lot going on in it. Not a lot of instruments playing at one time, which I like. I think that plays really well. It's a very subdued, kind of restrained type of score, and I think that helps greatly with films, in my opinion, because if you start throwing too much stuff in, I feel like me as a viewer starts to get a little bit overwhelmed with what's going on in the scene, and I want to be able to focus more on what's playing out in front of me than a whole lot of instruments going on at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. It just becomes a little bit too chaotic at times, and I just like more stripped down. That's my thing. So I really like their score for this. There's a combination of some just okay acting and kind of weak dialogue. That's one of the worst things about this movie, in my opinion, is that not bad acting, but okay acting, plus some poorly written dialogue in here, and those things don't go together very well. It can really take you out of the experience of the film and kind of make you like, ooh, it's a little bit cringe at the moment. And I did have a lot of that going on. Well, not a lot, an okay amount of it going on within the film. It feels like there are throwaway scenes and scenes that go on too long, which makes for a good amount of filler. Yes, this movie is, I think it was like an hour and 23 minutes with the credits included, and it still feels like it was kind of stretched to a degree, because it really just has like a premise. There's not a whole lot of actual story to it. I mean, there is more story than you might think, but there's still not a whole lot of story to it. So trying to get it from point A to point B and keeping it very interesting becomes a little bit tough, you can tell, for Williamson and Crabb as the two writers. They didn't have a super interesting way to do it. Plus, the characters that they wrote are really not that interesting. They're not super compelling characters, so there's nothing that's really going to keep you super glued to the screen. But you will start to notice, okay, this scene is going on longer than it really needs to, or certain scenes will happen and you're like, I don't really see a purpose for this scene at all. That's just what you get with this. Not the greatest, but you know. About 40 minutes in is when it gets pretty engaging. Up until that point, I mean, you have that opening sequence, which is very engaging. And then after that, it really slows down a lot. There's a bunch of that filler, those longer scenes. And I was kind of like, when are we really going to start getting going with this? About 40 minutes in is when it really starts to get going. So you have about another 40 minutes to go. So about halfway in this thing. Yeah, so just for expectation purposes, pretty slow until it gets to that point. It does ramp up decently, and I do like how they ramp things up, and it is pretty exciting after that. So that's good. Which leads me to my next point. There are some pretty good action sequences. The choreography of the action or fighting or, you know, horror stuff that's going on because the slasher, some pretty interesting stuff that I haven't necessarily seen in a slasher before, so that's very welcome. But yeah, pretty solid. You know, when it comes to the actual action of it, even though it took a lot longer than I wanted it to get to it, when it's actually happening, pretty solid. Pretty enjoyable. It's a solid enough explanation for what's going on, and it's also a bit tongue-in-cheek with how they explain that. I'm not going to go further than that because I obviously don't want to spoil anything about the movie, but with these films with slashers, there's always the kind of like, why is this happening? And when they finally get to that point of making that reveal of, okay, now you're going to know, decent. It was okay. So some people, actually a lot of people will probably see it coming, but it's still decent, in my opinion. And the last thing I want to say about it is it plays around with pandemonium and how people can act based on their situation, but in a very exaggerated way. This is a very kind of feels satirical in a way, satirical from a standpoint of the actual pandemic itself, but also people and how people react to pandemonium, to pandemics, to things of the unknown that can feel threatening to them personally. And people that they love, so just saying. So I like that aspect of it. It was kind of like an interesting, fresh take on things for that reason, but it also is very tried and true slasher type thing. So a little new, a little old, but actually more old than new, but a little bit of new. But anyway, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give this a decent enough 3-star rating. I do think it's worth watching. I've seen some people saying this is like one of the best movies that dropped in 2023, and I really don't think that's the case personally, but it's not bad. I mean, you won't regret your time watching it, most likely. I mean, I didn't, so check it out, maybe. This is where I'd like to hear your thoughts on the movie. If you've seen it, go ahead and put it in the comments and just let me know why you did or did not like it, or were in between on it. Just give me like a sentence or two. Totally enough. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content and to keep me encouraged to keep doing this stuff. Also, you can do a like on this video or any video just to kind of help out with the YouTube algorithm. And you can also hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing at least 3 regular videos and usually around like 2 or more shorts each week. So anyway, thanks everyone for checking this video out, and until next time, keep it brutal.